Hello, and welcome to this edition of Nonprofit Executive Spotlight, where we feature nonprofit management professionals seeking their next opportunity. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Road Tulips Consulting, and thank you very much for joining us for this edition. It features my longtime friend, Laurie Oken, who is seeking her next opportunity. Laurie, hello. Glad you could join me today. Could you tell the audience a little about yourself and why you love nonprofit management?
Oh, Cecilia, thank you so much for allowing me to come on the Nonprofit Executive Spotlight, and I appreciate this opportunity. So, a little bit about myself. Well, I started my early career in for-profit, and all of a sudden, after a while, one of my friends, I was debating, should I stay or not? And one of my friends introduced me to the nonprofit world. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, these people are really so nice and kind, and a little more, a lot more flexibility. And I landed in this company that was a large trade organization, the Realtors, and they gave me so many opportunities. I started in finance, did marketing, and ended up in leadership. And I was just so impressed with their flexibility, their can-do attitude, and working with members and volunteers really set my career in the right trajectory. And I have been a nonprofit lover ever since.
That is, I think, a great example of why people do fall in love with nonprofits. You mentioned you had a lot of flexibility, and you mentioned that you got to try different things, and one of those was leadership. Could you expand on that a little bit and tell us what you did in that role?
Once I had moved from several different departments and I got into leadership, I was put in charge of this annual conference, which was for the executive directors, CEOs, and their staff, where I had a committee under me, and I had to work with the committee to bring the best speakers on board. And they always were like, I don't know what speakers we should have. What should we do? And I said, hey, this will be really simple. What keeps you up at night? And by asking that simple question, we were able to brainstorm like 6 different modules, um, and figure out, hey, what are the technology challenges you're having? What are the volunteer board of director challenges? On and on and on. And we were then able to find speakers to match what keeps them up at night, because it would keep all those other 1,500 people up at night, and able to bring together a really successful education event every year. And every year we had a different committee of volunteers. So it was always a very successful event, and the evaluations proved that.
And programming or event management, conference management, is that something you continue to pursue after you left that trade association?
Oh yeah. I even in my volunteer opportunities that I do so on a regular basis, because like it's almost like once you're in the nonprofit world, you give back. And so currently I do a lot of volunteering. I work for Chicago Innovation and Catholic Charities in a number of local Chicago programs. And they always look to me like, well, how do you know to do this? I go, well, my background is, third of my job was meeting planning, and I can tell you what, how much water or coffee costs in Chicago. And I always know how to do the logistics and set up the meeting room and the chairs and bing, bang, boom. And they're like, wow, you're so organized. Can you help me with this? You can help me with that. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, my plate is full. I'm, really looking to help another organization, with their program management needs, and bring my skills to the next organization.
And that is a great example of how we in the nonprofit world can apply our skill set to other parts of life.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I know I do that myself. So, When you think about nonprofits overall, you said you love nonprofit management, you love working with them. So, what do you think is most important about what nonprofits do in society?
Well, what nonprofits do, and people just a lot of times don't understand it. There's the membership based, and then there's the 501(c)(3)s where they have to, raise money, kind of like your museums, philanthropies. And people are like, I just don't get it. I said, well, it's just like the for-profit world. We just don't have shareholders. The shareholders are our members. And we still have, governance. We've got um, the strategic plan. So I've worked extensively with the volunteer segment, the government segment of the nonprofit world, where you look at a strategic plan and the volunteers like, we want to do this, 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 and this. I said, well, okay, that's great, but our budget is this, this, and this, and this. So we either have to get more fundraising or sponsorships or more member dues to do all this, or more resources, but let's just work on the top, two or three or four things that are going to make you and the members shine, and have this association go to the top of the game out there in the world against all your competition, so that you look like the best association in town. And that's always really helped wherever I've worked.
It sounds like you're very good at bringing focus to volunteer activities. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And my last position, they weren't sure where they were going, but they know they wanted a DEI committee and an awards committee. So I said, well, first we have to get the right people on the bus for the committee. Who in this whole elaborate 4,000, it was a smaller association, who who's out there that is passionate, willing to commit, knows about these different diverse, different awards and different DEI qualities. So I worked with the chair and vice chair and sought out the right people to put on the committee before we just picked people.
Mhm.
And by doing that, we were able to proactively get the DEI committee out and able to bring a program nationwide in less than 6 months. Along with the awards, we were able to narrow down. They had all these awards going on. They're like, let's just narrow it down to 4. And we also brought out a new award just by having a focus, clarity, goals and objectives at the very, very beginning of each of the committees. So I like to work hand in hand with the volunteers and make sure that they're happy with the outcome.
That is a really impressive outcome, getting them to focus and streamline.
Mhm.
So, what are some other successes you think would be of interest to people out in the nonprofit community?
Well, one of the largest challenges I faced when I was with the realtors is their members thought that the CEOs had a really easy peasy job. And some of this was when um, way back when the recession was happening and they weren't getting a daily paycheck. And they thought, oh, your job is so easy. I want to take it. I want to take it. And it wasn't their fault. They just didn't know what the executives did for the association and what they did to keep those associations, propped up, and
Mhm.
how they actually helped on Capitol Hill through a lot of advocacy and changing of bills and the mortgage rates and everything. So I asked my boss, I said, do we have a leadership program for volunteers? I think some of these volunteers don't know what they don't know. And she goes,
Right.
well, we've got all this other education that you're in charge of, but hey, if you want to do some training. So I couldn't find anything in the United States, and I'm not one to recreate the wheel. So I found this great leadership training program up in Canada, and I just massaged it for the United States and had a partnership with the Canadian realtors. And it was like the best success ever. And it ended up being that it was a national program. I did train the trainer. And then also we had a 1 day event in Chicago where I actually made $80,000 in 1 day by training a handful of, over 300 leaders in a couple of rooms. And they'd always say, well, Laurie, I already know all this stuff. I said, well, money back guarantee. If you don't like it at the end of, 5, 6 hours, then they'd walk out like, oh my gosh, I got so much out of this training. I didn't know this stuff, and I'm going to tell everybody to come to this training. So it worked out really, really well. We trained a lot of people, and the program continues today.
Yeah, and that's an excellent investment in the future of the organization. But
Mhm.
you also mentioned you did something very important, which you brought in some income attached to that. So
Yes.
where did that income come from? Was it registrations? Was it sponsorship?
Yeah, it was all registration fees, and the volunteers were actually willing to invest in their longevity because I structured it. So I said, hey, new to volunteering, want to learn more about leadership. And I sold it that it wasn't just leadership with as a member, but leadership in your community. And a lot of these people today are way up at the top of the charts, and they're leaders in their community. Sometimes they've turned into like mayors and chambers of commerce leaders. They don't have to stay in their profession, but they become really good leaders because of this leadership training.
You've had a long-term impact based on your work and your previous work in your career. So when you're looking at what's next for you, how would you describe the job you would like to have?
Well, I've always been a lover of working with program management, volunteer leaders, and trying to get the right program that will help the members succeed and have them look good, have them do better on their jobs, and also give them success and a sense of accomplishment and keep them shining on stage. That's my job. And I'm like more the behind the scenes person and want to continue doing that as a manager.
So you want to support volunteer leader success by giving them education and opportunity.
Correct.
Excellent. So you said you started out at a trade association. Is that the type of organization you would like to work at again, or do you have your eye on a different type of nonprofit?
Well, I can work at a trade association, but I can also work at a 501(c)(3). I mean, my skills are transferable to both sides of the coin. And as I've been volunteering in Chicago, I've done a lot of fundraising for these different organizations that I've been involved with, especially the like Chicago Innovation and some of my neighborhood associations. So I am very flexible, agile, and I've got a wealth of transferable skills.
And I like that you pointed that out because skills are transferable. And if you're working with volunteers or you're working with staff, you can always use those skills to help. What sort of a culture would you like to find? What would feel like home to you
Mhm.
professionally?
Well, I love working in a collaborative environment and where there's a lot of communication, whether it's in the office, online, email, whatever floats the boat, Teams, I'm just a big communicator. I'm fond of communicating, and I'm flexible with communication styles, but I like to know what the other side wants so I can meet their needs and make sure that everybody's on the same trajectory, on the same boat.
And is that in support of the mission and strategic plan? Is that what your goal is?
Yeah, in support of everyone's mission and strategic plan, not only the organization, but also our members, and or if every committee and or chapter out there has a different mission, working into conjunctions with those goals and objectives.
So you want to support everybody's outcomes to be positive.
Exactly.
So, is there anything you would like potential employers to know about you and what you will bring to their organization?
Well, I'm a boots on the ground girl. I come in, do what's needed to get the job done, and produce produce results. I No job is too little for me. I've done everything from, moving freight, packing boxes, to working with the um, like National Association, um, president, CEO, all aspects, leadership team, making sure that room of 30,000 people in the conference, are satisfied. Last week is a a gig job. I was working at the McCormick place with 120,000 people, and our customers are like, I don't know where I'm going. I go, gotcha. Do you have good shoes on? We got to walk a mile. So I walk the person to their next gig, their next booth. I'm not afraid of doing anything.
So, you're there to make sure things happen
Yep, that is
and get
me.
results. Well, I love that. So, Lori, if somebody wanted to talk to you about opportunities at their organization, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
It's easy. I've got LinkedIn, which is Laurie Oken, and my Gmail is laurieoken@gmail.com. And everything is on my LinkedIn account.
That's excellent. That's a great reference point. So, Lori, thank you for joining me for this edition of Nonprofit Executive Spotlight.
Thank you so much, Sue, and have a great day.
Thank you. You're welcome. Well, this is Lori. I've known her for a while. She'd be a great addition to your team, so scoop her up before somebody else does. That's it for this edition of Nonprofit Executive Spotlight. We'll be back unless everyone gets a job.